Many people laugh when they see that the moment their owner stands up, the cat immediately jumps into that exact spot and lies down. At first glance, it looks like a very typical feline, seat-stealing move, fast, precise, and completely unfazed. But if you observe more closely, this behavior is not simply about being playful or doing the opposite of what the owner wants. It reflects how cats perceive humans, living space, and their own sense of safety. In my view, the most interesting thing about this behavior is that people often explain it from their own perspective, assuming the cat is being possessive, stubborn, or taking advantage of a warm spot. Meanwhile, for the cat, this may be a choice driven by instinct, but also rich in emotion. Your seat is not only warm, but also carries a trace of safety. Many people think cats choose a seat that someone has just left simply because it is still warm. That is true, but not enough. Compared to humans, cats live with a much sharper sense of smell, so your chair or your usual sitting spot is not just an ordinary upholstered surface to them. For them, it is a place that retains your body scent, your daily rhythm, and the familiar feeling of someone they trust. In other words, you may have left, but your presence has not completely disappeared. The cat lies there as a way of holding on to the remaining sense of reassurance. If compared, dogs often show affection in a way that is active, obvious, and outward-facing. Cats are more reserved. They do not always cling to you or demand direct interaction. So choosing to lie exactly where you were sitting is sometimes a very cat-specific version of saying, "I feel comfortable being close to signs of you." This is not exactly taking your spot, but rather blending territories. People tend to understand a chair according to the logic of ownership. Whoever sat there first, that spot belongs to them. Cats are different. They perceive space through scent, familiarity, and the feeling of being in control of the environment. When a cat lies in your spot, it may not think at all that it is stealing it, but rather that it is blending its scent with yours. This is a very noteworthy point. For cats, familiarity does not come only from being near one another, but also from leaving signs of each other in the same shared space. So, if viewed positively, that action is more like a way of affirming a relationship than a challenging behavior. My own view is that many people tend to label cats as cold, but in reality they simply express affection in a quieter language. Choosing your spot is one such silent form of communication. Cats often choose the spot of the person they observe the most. It is not by chance that in a house with many people, a cat especially likes the spot of one particular person. Usually, that is the person who feeds it, plays with it, takes care of it, or simply the one whose routine is the most stable. Cats are extremely observant animals. They notice who opens the door, who fills the food bowl, who usually sits where, and who creates the familiar rhythm of the household. So your chair is not merely an object. It is also the center of a routine the cat has remembered. However, I do not completely agree with the extreme interpretation that cats view their owners as leaders, in the sense of a rigid hierarchy system. That understanding easily leads us to apply the model of another species to cats. I think it makes more sense to say that cats recognize who has the greatest influence on the stability of their living environment, and therefore they prioritize signs associated with that person. The temperature factor is real, and very practical. Even if we set aside scent and attachment, one thing must still be admitted: cats are extremely practical. They like warmth, and often even prefer temperatures higher than what humans find comfortable. A seat that someone has just left is an ideal position, soft, safe, still warm, and available without any waiting. Here, cats show a very characteristic part of their nature, both affectionate and calculating. They may genuinely like you, but they also do not mind immediately taking advantage of the comfort you have just left behind. And I think it is exactly this mixture of emotion and efficiency that makes cats so appealing. They do not live by completely displaying affection, nor do they act in a completely emotionless way. Cats are always somewhere between those two lines. Cats learn from human habits more than we think. One point many people underestimate is that cats observe their owners' routines very closely. If you often sit in one place to work, read, or look at your phone, the cat will gradually associate that position with rest, stability, and familiarity. After some time, that place is no longer just your chair, but also becomes a meaningful point in the cat's behavioral map. Put more simply, the cat sees that you trust that place, so it also learns to trust that place. From this perspective, a cat lying in the spot you just left is not merely a momentary reflex. It also shows that it is living very closely in sync with your rhythm. Cats are not as indifferent as they often appear. On the contrary, they pay more attention to humans than we think. Sometimes cats can predict that you are about to stand up. People who have lived with cats for a long time often have an interesting feeling. The cat seems to know in advance the moment they are about to leave the chair. In fact, this is not mysterious. Cats are extremely good at reading tiny signals: a change in posture, putting the phone down, breathing more heavily, leaning forward, pushing off with the hands to stand up. The details you do not notice are actually very clear, advanced signals to them. This shows that cats do not only react to circumstances, but also know how to predict based on repeated habits. So the fact that they appear at exactly the right moment is sometimes not accidental, but the result of a whole process of subtle observation. At this point, I think people should stop seeing cats as a species that just does whatever it wants. In reality, many of their behaviors follow a clear logic. It is just that this logic does not resemble the kinds of expressions humans are used to noticing. The greatest value of this behavior lies in the word trust. If we explain a cat taking your spot only through scent, temperature, or habit, then we are still missing an important layer of meaning: trust. Cats are very cautious when they sleep or rest. They do not relax easily in a place that makes them uneasy. Therefore, when a cat passes over many other positions and chooses exactly your spot, the place that still carries your scent, your warmth, and reminds it of your presence, that says that being close to signs of you makes it feel at peace. In my opinion, this is the most precious part. Not because the cat loves in the romanticized way humans imagine, but because in its instinctive world, the feeling of safety is a very real form of affection. Cats do not need to show too much. If they choose a place that carries your traces in order to lie down, that alone is already a deep enough acknowledgement. Many people react half jokingly and half annoyed: out of all the chairs, why does it have to lie in exactly mine? But perhaps it should be seen more gently. Cats do not always know how to show attachment in the way humans expect. They do not always run over to hug your legs, they do not always come immediately when called, and they are certainly not the kind of species that likes to depend completely. That is exactly why small behaviors like lying in the spot you have just been sitting in are worth understanding correctly. It may be convenience, yes. It may be the instinct to seek warmth, also yes. But at the same time, it is also a sign that you have become a familiar and trustworthy part of their world. And for cats, being able to trust is already something very great.